The portal is a poppin', and we are starting to see wide receivers go in that should make you turn your head. So here are three guys. First, J Michael Sturdivant from UCLA might be the most underrated wide receiver in the transfer portal. This is not a guy who's going to garner a lot of attention. Why? He doesn't have huge numbers. He hasn't played at big-time schools the last couple of years. 2 years at UCLA, where he was underutilized. 2 years at Cal, where he was closer to his full potential of being utilized. He has got 1 year left because he didn't play a whole lot his first year. His receiving yardage in the last 3 seasons, 1 at Cal and 2 at UCLA, have gone down each year. 755 yards in 2022. That was at Cal. 597 at UCLA in his first year with Chip Kelly, and then this past year under now fired offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, 315 yards. This is not what this guy is capable of. This was a blue chip prospect coming out of high school. It was a great pull by Justin Wilcox in Cal. It was a great get in the portal for UCLA. He has not found a home. Don't let the numbers deceive you. He is 6'3", about 200 pounds. In this past season, he caught just 2 touchdowns. He had 22 receptions the entire year. That is hilariously underusing him. So this is a guy who could play in any conference in college football. If he goes to your team, then I'm curious what else is on the roster. I don't know that he's ready or still has the ability to. Maybe we'll see it reemerge. Maybe I'm underselling him here. But I think that he is a low-end number 1 receiver, but the highest-end number 2 receiver. So think about a team like Auburn, for instance. They brought in a guy in Keandre Lambert-Smith to pair with Cam Coleman. Cam Coleman was stellar as a true freshman. He was this big heralded 5-star recruit, for those who don't know, and he's lived up to the hype. Cam Coleman's going to be there next year. But Keandre Lambert-Smith, the transfer from Penn State, who was also a 5th year, he's done now. J Michael Sturdivant would be a great replacement. I mean, a great replacement. And keep a solid receiving core for maybe incoming quarterback Malik Murphy. We'll see if Auburn is ultimately able to land him. But there's a guy who's been around college football. There's a guy whose body is in really good shape. He has been durable over the last several years. Yards after catch, contested catches, good route runner. He is really solid. So if he's your number 1, you're in good shape. If he's your number 2, you have an elite wide receiving core. So that's the first guy to know about. Second guy, Micah Hudson. When you talk about untapped potential, here you go. Here you go. Hudson was a big-time recruit in the class of 2024, a 5-star. He went to Texas Tech, and it was a big win for Joey McGuire and company. And guess what? Like other places, they weren't able to maximize his talent, and thus he is in the transfer portal. He was the number 4 overall receiver according to 24/7 Sports. Number 4 overall guy. In 8 games played this year, he had 8 receptions for 123 yards. It didn't work out. It didn't work out for this reason, that reason, the other reason. You come up with whatever reason you want. But this is the sort of guy that when coming out of high school, if he committed to your school, you'd be really excited. You'd be stoked. Like, oh my gosh, this guy, he can make an instant impact as a freshman. He could do this. He's 6 feet tall, about 195 pounds, not quite as tall as J Michael Sturdivant, but still a guy who's got tremendous versatility, who's still got plenty of potential. But you might look at his numbers from this year and say, oh, well, it didn't work out. Texas Tech they were just like a pogo stick bouncing up and down all season long. They ended with an 8-4 record, which is where I had them coming into this year. But they just weren't able to figure out where he fit into the offense, and they had other weapons. They brought in a guy in Josh Kelly from Washington State who was really good. And that's where Baron Morton looked a lot more often. So Micah Hudson is, again, not somebody who you should judge based on his numbers and say, well, I mean, he didn't do anything. Like, this applies to Jonte Cook II as well, who I believe is looking at Texas A&M in addition to Oregon. Former 5-star receiver, under 200 yards receiving in each of his first 2 campaigns as a Texas Longhorn. But the guy who you see on film that warranted such a high grade, according to recruiting services, he's still in there. He just hasn't been unleashed. He's a caterpillar. He's looking for the coach that turns him into a butterfly. So Micah Hudson, definitely a name that can go somewhere and make an impact. And Talk about how this ties to Texas in just a moment. But KC Concepcion, he's been in the portal for a bit longer, and I think that he's someone that is he's different. He's different. He reportedly, according to Bama Football on YouTube, was looking at Alabama. It's not the only place that has said he's looking at Alabama, but KC Concepcion, 5'11", 190 pounds. Here's what I see in him. Silas Bolden at Texas. It's one of 3 wide receiver transfers that they brought in. Same sort of, kind of a gadget guy, but also a better all-around receiver than you would probably think. The interesting thing about Concepcion is I don't know what his NFL prospects are, but he's got 2 years of eligibility left. So he could settle in and be a 2-year starter for somebody. In his freshman campaign, he had 839 yards and 10 touchdowns. And then this past year, it all went wrong for NC State. Most things went wrong. Name an area of a football team. Think about NC State. It did not go well for Dave Doran and company. 460 yards and 6 touchdowns this season. So he's in the transfer portal, could go to a variety of places. And when I think about guys like this making an impact, I look at what Texas did in the transfer portal, and these are the sorts of guys, they're not the only ones, but they are some of the biggest ones. These are the sorts of guys that can step in and revamp your receiving core right away. Or they can supplement your receiving core if you've got a strong returning group of guys and you're looking for that one other piece. Any of these guys could absolutely do that. So Texas is a great example of what I'm talking about with these guys. So the Longhorns lose a trio of wide receivers from a college football playoff and Big 12 champion team last year. Jordan Whittington goes in the 6th round, Adonai Mitchell in the 2nd, Xavier Worthy goes in the 1st, and he's, of course, a part of the 12-1 Kansas City Chiefs offense. It's pretty darn good. So you lose all of those guys. And what does Steve Sarkisian do? Hits the portal. Isaiah Bond transfers in from Alabama. Boom, instant impact. Silas Bolden, who, again, I compare to KC Concepcion. I think there are a lot of similarities between those guys in the way that they could be involved. They could fit in a Steve Sarkisian offense, by the way, if they have departures from that particular room. But they bring in Silas Bolden. They bring in Isaiah Bond. They bring in Matthew Golden from Houston. What are all of those guys? Studs. You look at that Texas receiving core. When the Longhorns offense struggles, I never get the sense that it is the fault or the problem is rooted in the wide receiver room. It usually feels like it's more about what the quarterback has not been able to do. Quinn Ewers, not a particularly consistent guy. So these are 3 guys, J Michael Sturdivant, Micah Hudson, and KC Concepcion, that are going to be able to find roles on teams that can push for a conference championship. And last year, Texas was just one example. They're certainly not the only one. Evan Stewart went to Oregon from Texas A&M. Felt like he had a lot of untapped potential. And you know what? He hasn't been Oregon's leading receiver. That's Tez Johnson. But he's been a guy who, in big games like Ohio State, for instance, or games when Tez Johnson's been out, has been instrumental to Oregon orchestrating an undefeated regular season here. So I am more than a little curious to see where these guys end up, because somebody, somewhere, is going to get an impact wide receiver in any of these guys. And in 2025, you're going to think back to shows like this one, and you're going to say, hey, I remember when that guy at the portal and Spencer was talking about it. Now here he is with X new team, insert whoever you think they might wind up with, and now they're making impact plays. Roster building starts as the season goes on, because college football just doesn't always make sense. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.